You're listening to Neurodivergent Solutions, a bite-sized episode of Divergent Paths with me, Dr. Regina McMenomy. And I'm here to drop one insight at a time to help you live, work, and lead with your whole self, no masking required. If you've recently discovered you're neurodivergent, chances are you've been masking for a long time. And if you're wondering how to stop, it's not as easy as flipping a switch. Unmasking is a process. Today, I'm sharing the strategies that have helped me and my clients reclaim our full selves one step at a time. So I want to start this episode by saying I didn't know I was masking when I was first diagnosed with ADHD and peer-reviewed autism. I thought I had always been my authentic self. I didn't really think that masking was a thing that I was doing. And as I moved into treating my ADHD with my medication and with, accommodating my life for my disability, I started to realize exactly how much of who I presented was not my authentic self. And this took time, like a lot of time, a lot more time than I would have wanted it to, but it took time. So if you're listening and you're thinking, well, I don't mask, I challenge you to think about that a little deeper and maybe give this episode or some of the other episodes we've done on masking another listen to see if you can kind of pick up maybe some of the subtle ways that you might actually be masking. So that's part of the process, is just starting to identify and name what you do as performance, what you do as something for someone else or in an environment that is not necessarily in alignment with who you feel you are or who your authentic self is. So I'd encourage you to do some, like, maybe journaling. Now, keep in mind, journaling does not always have to be like writing something out in a very elaborate pen and paper situation. Journaling can be you grabbing your phone and opening your notes app and just writing down your thoughts that come out as you're listening to this podcast, if that works for you. Process through this a little bit. Ask yourself these questions. When do I feel the most on? When do I feel like I'm not being myself? And where am I when I need to perform like that? Who am I performing for? Who is this on sensation coming from? And the most important one for me when I learned to start unmasking was, what does it feel like when I'm out of an environment that demands I mask? So that was really important for me. What does it feel like when I know I've gone away from a place where I had to mask and I had to put on the neurotypical face? What does it feel like for me when I leave that environment? Some subtle changes that can happen, or some things that you might not have noticed were performative. You think about your voice. Think about how you present your voice. A lot of people who work in customer service have a specific phone voice that they use, right? Do you slip into that? Do you slip into your waitress voice? I would slip into my teacher voice. That was something that was, a performative thing for me. So I did have teacher voice, and that would be something I would slip into when I was feeling like I needed to mask. Think about how much eye contact you had to make. Were you comfortable with making eye contact in the situation or the place or the conversation you were having? What kind of shutdowns did you experience or do you experience? Do you have social scripts that help you cope in certain moments? Those can all be forms of masking. Masking doesn't necessarily mean you broadcast everything about who you are to everyone you encounter. And I think that is a subtlety that often goes overlooked. In some of my personal relationships and in friendships I've had that have struggled through this transition, that was one thing that I got pushed back on from a couple of friends. Well, I don't need to let everybody know who I am. And that's not what it means to unmask. What it means is that you are, acting in a way that's in alignment with who your true self is and your authentic self. It's about feeling safe in your own skin and allowing that to show up It doesn't necessarily mean you have to tell everybody everything about your life. And in fact, I've discovered as I've unmasked that I don't feel the need to explain myself like I did when I was masking. When I was masking, I had a very high need to explain why I was making the choices I was making, or who I was, or why I was the way I was, or, over explain, the simplest things. One of the most straightforward things I can come to as an example here for this is with my hair. So I have let my white hair grow out, which has been a really empowering process for me. But I highlight it with blue and purple highlights. And I get a lot of compliments on my hair, like a lot. And I love it. It's very flattering. Now, it used to be when I got compliments like that, I would have to go into some sort of performative story. And anytime somebody gave me a comment, like especially on my clothes or stuff, I would like make a comment like, "Oh yeah, I can't believe the bargain I got this for. It was only $20 at this, or it was only $10 and blah blah. And I got it at a secondhand store or whatever it was." I always had to go into some story about it, some story to I realize later make me more comfortable with the compliment. So as I get compliments on my hair now, I just say thank you. And I just leave it at that because that's all the interaction that it needs to be. If I am in a situation where I'm continuing to interact with that person and it's not just a passing compliment, I will say something like, yeah, so when my hair decided it was not going to have any more of my natural hair color, I decided I would make it my favorite colors instead. And that's my story. And I ended at that. And that has been also very empowering. Like I don't have to justify anything to anybody. People can tell me things are nice, that I look nice, and I can just leave it at that. And that is part of the unmasking process for me. That need to no longer having the need to explain myself. The goal in unmasking is to feel a sense of congruence where you feel in alignment, not that you need to confess your every truth to every person you come in contact with. So one of the biggest things to do is to start doing this in safe places, do this with friends, low stakes environments, with your best friends. I'm going to not say family here because sometimes masking in around our family is necessary. Depending on what your family is like and depending on what growing up undiagnosed neurodivergent was like in your family. And if there is a high expectation that you will present as neurotypical in your family. So maybe pick a friend or a social environment to present unmasked and see how it goes. Experiment with stimming and fidget toys and different things like that might make it more comfortable. And if you are someone who is like me, who is an external processor and you need to externally process, don't feel bad about telling people I need right now to externally process and I need your help, and I need the space right now to process this. So don't feel bad or don't worry about that. And start noticing your somatic experience as you do this. Because for me, I felt so much lighter and so much freer when I started to unmask than I had felt at any other point in my life. I feel so much more energy than I ever felt before in my masked life because I wasn't trying to perform to be somebody that I wasn't. So some strategies for unmasking I've talked a little bit about here. A lot has to do with communication, not, modifying your voice, letting go of softeners in your language. Like if you say sorry a lot, that was something I had to train myself out of. Or qualifying your language or qualifying your opinions. Start to remove some of that and see how things land. I started being very mindful about when and where I said sorry and not knee-jerk sorry as the first response to somebody responding to me, which was something I did a lot. And accommodate yourself without feeling shame about it. Just know that sometimes you might need to wear your AirPods or earplugs or, something like that to make an environment more conducive to you and your energy. Have those conversations, redefine the social norms with your friends. Say, I don't really want to talk about small talk. I want to get into like deep conversations. I'm not really interested in like little petty conversations, but I'd love to have a deep conversation about your favorite show or your special interest. Let your interest lead, talk about the things that light you up, talk about the things that light you up and let that be where you find the power to unmask. Like your brain is beautiful. Your interests are beautiful. Like these are things that the people who truly love you will love how much being able to talk about that will light you up. They will love that. And, know that sometimes, you might have a lot of information and you might want to info dump and you might want to share a whole bunch, and be kind and considerate to your friends and your family and your, significant others who you might, info dump on, and thank them for their interest, even if you notice that as you are processing, their eyes might glaze over a little bit because, let's cut everybody some slack. It's a lot to take in sometimes when you get some autistic joy coming your way. So, please remember, unmasking isn't about becoming somebody new. It's about empowering you to be who you were before you learned to mask. So please head over to divergentpathsconsulting.com, sign up for my newsletter, where I share even more information about unmasking and these processes and some steps that you can take to help yourself live your most authentic life. And until next time, stay regulated.